There's a particular kind of silence that falls over a crowd when someone does something they weren't supposed to be able to do. No cheering, no booing, just a quiet realization that everything everyone assumed was wrong. That's the silence surrounding Shane van Gisbergen right now, 7 races into the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season. The critics had a simple, clean argument. SVG is a road course wizard. Put him on an oval, and he falls apart. For a while, the numbers backed them up. But something has shifted in 2026, and the people who were loudest about his oval weakness have suddenly found very little to say. To understand why this story matters, you have to go back to where it started. Shane van Gisbergen is not someone who stumbled into motorsport success. Before he ever strapped into a stock car, he had already built a career that most professional racing drivers would consider complete. From Auckland, New Zealand, he conquered the Australian Supercars series 3 times. Championships in 2016, 2021, and 2022. He collected 80 race wins across his Supercars career. He won the Bathurst 1,003 times, one of the most physically and technically demanding endurance races on the planet. He won the Bathurst 12-hour. He stood on the podium at the 24 Hours of Daytona. By any global standard, the man was already elite. So when NASCAR came calling, it wasn't a gamble on an unknown quantity. It was an invitation extended to a proven world-class talent. The question was never whether SVG could drive. The question was whether skills built over decades on road courses would survive contact with NASCAR's oval-dominated world. The answer to that question began in the summer of 2023 on the streets of Chicago. SVG entered a single Cup Series race, the very first street course event in NASCAR history, and he won it on debut. His first ever Cup start. That hadn't happened since Johnny Rutherford way back in 1963. It wasn't a fluke. He controlled the race with the kind of composed authority that veterans spend years developing. Overnight, Trackhouse Racing signed him full-time, and the real journey began. Trackhouse took a measured approach with their new signing. Rather than throwing SVG directly into the deep end of the Cup Series, they placed him in the Xfinity Series for the entirety of 2024, giving him structured time to learn the rhythm and demands of American oval racing. He won 3 races, finished 12th in the standings, and showed enough promise to suggest the transition was progressing. He also made a small number of Cup starts during that year, and on ovals, his best result was 26th at Darlington. The gap between road course brilliance and oval competitiveness was significant, and everyone could see it. Then came 2025, his first full-time Cup season, and it produced one of the most split narratives in recent NASCAR history. Depending on the track type, you were watching 2 completely different drivers. On road courses, SVG was in a class entirely of his own. He won 5 of the 6 road course events on the schedule. At Mexico City, he crossed the finish line 16.5 seconds ahead of the field, the largest winning margin in Cup racing in over 15 years. At Sonoma, he led 97 of 110 laps. He won again at Chicago, then at Watkins Glen, then at the Charlotte Roval. By his 38th start, he already had 5 Cup wins. The last driver to reach 5 wins that fast was Dan Gurney back in 1968. 3 of his victories that season featured the largest winning margins on road courses since 1996. In 6 road course starts, he led 52% of all laps and spent only 5% of his laps outside the top 10. Those aren't the numbers of someone who is good at road course. Those are the numbers of someone who is operating on a different level entirely. The oval results read like a different driver's season entirely. 31st at Phoenix, 34th at Las Vegas, 32nd at Homestead, 3 straight races buried outside the top 30. He spent the first half of the year anchored near the bottom of the standing. SVG himself admitted it was brutal. He opened up about the specific mental and technical challenge of oval driving in a way that few drivers would. He said, "You have to go into the corners flat out, land in the banking, and just trust the car. That trust, that willingness to commit completely at the point of maximum risk, doesn't come naturally. It has to be earned through repetition." He even said straight up that the driver was the problem at that. No deflection, no excuses. Just honesty. His crew chief Stephen Doran was also navigating only his 2nd full Cup season, which meant both men were simultaneously climbing their own learning curves. SVG acknowledged that the frustration was real, but described the dynamic inside the team as constructive rather than corrosive. They weren't pointing fingers. They were working through it together. The second half of 2025 began to show what that work was producing. A top 10 finish at Kansas in the fall, an 11th at Talladega, a 14th at Martinsville. Not spectacular results, but unmistakable movement in the right direction. He won the Rookie of the Year award convincingly, made the playoffs, and finished 12th in the final playoff stand. The oval question, though, didn't go away. It followed him into the offseason and all the way to Daytona for the start of 2026. The stakes heading into 2026 were higher than they'd ever been. NASCAR reverted to the chase for the championship format, which fundamentally changed SVG's position. In 2025, 5 road course victories were enough to carry him deep into the playoffs despite his oval struggles. That safety net no longer exists. Under the chase format, a driver must accumulate points consistently across all track types to secure a top 16 standing by race 26. Winning alone is no longer sufficient. And on top of that, NASCAR removed 2 road courses from the schedule, the Mexico City race and the Charlotte Roval, 2 of SVG's most reliable point-scoring events from the year before. SVG addressed the road course reduction without any self-pity during Daytona 500 Media Day. "I didn't join the series to do road courses," he said plainly. "Obviously, it's a bonus, and yeah, I would love more road courses than less, but it is what it is, and thankfully we're getting better on the oval, so that's good." The framing was important. He wasn't lamenting the loss. He was acknowledging the challenge and accepting it. Christopher Bell of Joe Gibbs Racing raised a structural problem that many had overlooked. The current 20-minute practice format, a remnant of COVID-19 era cost-cutting that NASCAR never reversed, places drivers like SVG at a compounding disadvantage. Fortunately for his competitors, and unfortunately for him, the format handicaps him tremendously, Bell said. "If he would have done this years ago, when we had hours of practice and multiple sets of tires for practice, I think he would have been a lot further along." SVG had always been known in Supercars for building into weekends progressively, refining his feel across multiple sessions. One 20-minute hit before qualifying makes that approach nearly impossible. Bell was clear that this wasn't an excuse. It was a structural reality that was slowing the development of a driver who had every other ingredient to succeed. 7 races into 2026, the progression on ovals has been sharp enough that it's no longer a debate. The Daytona 500 set the tone. SVG qualified 13th, led laps in a race, and was comfortably positioned inside the top 10 when he got collected in a crash not of his making. He crossed the line 30th, but anyone watching closely could see the pace was genuine. He belonged up front. Atlanta delivered the breakthrough result. In the Echo Park Speedway race, SVG achieved his best oval finish in Cup, 6th place. The New Zealander overcame 2 separate slides through the front stretch grass, one of his own doing, one of someone else's, to charge back through the field. Kyle Larson, who caused the first incident, took full responsibility publicly, saying it was entirely his mistake. SVG simply recovered, kept his composure, and drove back to 6th. A single result vaulted him from 28th to 16th in the standings. "It was awesome fun," he said after the race, a line that tells you something about the competitor's mentality when things go sideways. Coda brought a second-place finish behind Tyler Reddick, ending his 5-race road course winning streak, 1 result short of matching Jeff Gordon's record of 6 consecutive road course wins. He still banked 48 points from that weekend and climbed to 5th in the standing. Phoenix was where the real eyebrows were raised. SVG spun twice during the race. Anyone watching from the grandstands or the press box assumed his day was over. Jeff Gluck, who covers the sport closely for NASCAR.com, watched from the press box and later said, "He comes back to finish 11th somehow. I have no idea how that happened. I literally have no idea how that happened." An 11th place finish after 2 spins on a short track that he had previously identified as one of his weakest is not a result you manufacture through luck. Something had genuinely changed. Las Vegas was the painful exception. Damage to his front splitter on the very first lap left him nursing a broken car for the entire race. He finished last. It was the kind of result that can derail a season's momentum, and it dropped him back to 16th in point. But it was circumstantial, not a reflection of his development. Darlington brought the clearest year-over-year evidence of growth. He finished 14th. In 2024, he finished 26th at Darlington. In 2025, he finished 20th. Now he's 14th. The improvement is obvious. Each visit to the same track producing a better result is the definition of a learning curve working as intended. And at Martinsville, he started 5th, spent the bulk of the race in the top 10, scored stage points in both stages, and finished 11th. An aggressive call from his pit box briefly elevated him to 2nd behind Chase Elliott. After the race, he reflected on what the starting position had. Starting up front makes the racing flow much better and cleaner. He is no longer just reacting to what's happening around him. He's racing. When NASCAR Insights advanced metrics dropped over the Easter break, they confirmed what the finishes were already suggesting. The Adjusted Points Plus Index, which benchmarks driver performance against the Cup Series average of 100, now places SVG above average on drafting tracks and short tracks. On standard ovals, he's still below the Cup average, but the gap from his 2025 figures, 45 on the points index and 47.8 on driver rating, to where he sits now represents dramatic, measurable progress in a single off-season and early season stretch. Stage point accumulation on ovals, something that was essentially non-existent for him in 2025, has become a consistent part of his race weeks in 2026. He currently sits 14th in the standings, right on the boundary of the top 16 needed to qualify for the chase. The drivers competing against SVG every weekend have stopped hedging their assessments. Denny Hamlin, widely considered the championship frontrunner this season, offered a straightforward observation. Elite superior drivers find a way to adapt. He confirmed the trend with SVG is continuing upward. Chase Elliott, the 2020 Cup Series champion, pointed to something more fundamental. SVG has a great feel for natural balance behind the wheel, and that's a really big deal. Natural balance, the instinctive sense of what a car is doing beneath you, is the quality that separates good drivers from great ones, and Elliott was saying SVG has it in abundance. Christopher Bell went the furthest. He clearly has the skill set and is a top-level talent, and I think if you give him enough experience, he's going to figure out whatever type of racing he wants to figure out. He's clearly getting the hang of it, and it's not going to be long before he's a factor on an oval. Three-time champion Joey Logano acknowledged a solid start and a job well done. Bubba Wallace has already gone on record predicting SVG wins an oval race before 2026 is over. And teammate Ross Chastain put in the most vivid terms possible. Chastain said he could see rugby balls flying over the grandstands at an oval track someday, a direct reference to SVG's signature victory celebration of punting a rugby ball into the crowd after a win. Jordan Bianchi, speaking on the NASCAR Insider podcast The Teardown, described how the garage views SVG's development. You talk to other drivers, and they are in awe of his ability because they know how good he is. Yes, it's road courses versus all ovals, but if he puts in the time and the work, and they see this, it's transferable to some degree. He's doing it, man. He is getting better and better. Inside Trackhouse Racing, the picture is equally clear. SVG has separated himself from his teammates through the opening stretch of 2026. Ross Chastain, carrying 5 oval wins and a championship 4 appearance on his career record, sits 5 spots behind SVG in the standings, with just 1 top 15 finish all season. His best oval result on non-drafting tracks in 2026 is a 16th place finish. Rookie Connor Zilish, who made history by winning 10 Xfinity races in 2025, is undergoing the same adjustment process SVG faced a year ago. SVG has outfinished both of his teammates in 5 of the 7 races completed so far. NASCAR insider Eric Estep named him Trackhouse Standout Performer and identified his oval development as one of the most significant learning curves unfolding in the Cup garage right now. What makes SVG's story compelling beyond the results is the way he talks about all of it. There's no performance, no manufacturer confidence, no attempt to get ahead of where he actually is. When asked directly whether an oval win was imminent, he didn't take the bait. I'm a long way from that, but I certainly feel and can see it now, he said. I know every week will come with learning more things, and I feel a big improvement still. I know what's going on, rather than deer in headlights. He calibrated the team's current level with the same precision. I feel like we're an 8th to 15th place car most weeks, which probably doesn't sound like a lot. But we started at tracks running 30th, so it's been a huge improvement. And on what drives him forward without specific targets in mind, I've never really been a goal person. Making the playoffs would be nice, but I just need to keep getting better and keep learning, I guess. He said he doesn't want to win with luck. He wants to earn it. That single sentence captures everything about what SVG is doing in 2026. Not chasing a viral moment, not manufacturing a storyline, just a driver, a crew chief, and a team grinding through the hardest kind of learning, the kind that happens in front of millions of people week after week on tracks that once exposed every gap in his game. The haters had their moment. The numbers gave him ammunition, and for a while, the argument held. But 7 races into 2026, Shane van Gisbergen is building something that's becoming very hard to argue against. The oval win is coming. The only question is which track gets the rugby ball first.